Thank you so much, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Thank you once again, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. It is my pleasure to be with you today and to have the honor of presenting my report. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the mandate. I'm grateful that we managed to celebrate the first decade of the mandate together with my predecessor in yesterday's side event. Furthermore, I would like to thank you all for your fruitful and constructive cooperation with the mandate. Even though we had to deal with budgetary constraints, we have been very engaged at many different levels. In events with civil society actors, NHRIs, UN agencies, funds and programs, and member states in joint efforts to strengthen the human rights of older persons. It was also my pleasure to be an active part of the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Aging in New York, which has concluded its mandate. I can assure you that I will support all initiatives aimed at following this process and strengthening the human rights of older persons in a constructive way. Dear Excellencies, colleagues and friends, retaining control over decisions of daily life and having those decisions respected is a fundamental requirement of enjoying basic human rights and leading an autonomous life. Being denied this autonomy can lead to abuse, neglect, and the loss of control over one's life. In the recent report, I discovered that older persons frequently face significant barriers to exercise their legal capacity over personal decisions, such as managing their finances, choosing employment, handling their property, deciding their vote, choosing where and with who they want to live, accessing healthcare services, and participating in family and community activities. The root cause for this is ageism, prejudice and assumption based on age prevalent in society. The loss of capacity can begin with seemingly protective actions, such as performing tasks on their behalf or restricting their activities for safety reasons. However, this can escalate to patronizing behaviors and even outright harassment. In institutional settings, older persons are often restricted in their autonomy due to inadequate safeguards, lack of vulnerability assessment, and insufficient independent oversight. Consent in institutional settings is often compromised. Lack of alternatives can also turn consent into coercion. One of the core problems is the narrative of decline in ageism, which is often deeply seated in society. Older persons are seen as a weak and vulnerable part of society. This becomes evident in policies and laws with age limits or fewer opportunities with increased age. The outcome is the belief that courts, medical providers, families, and others in authority can make better decisions on behalf of the older person than they can make for themselves. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, the current human rights framework does not include a consistent definition of autonomy and leaves protection gaps for the rights of older persons. Article 12 of the Convention of the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities recognizes the person with disabilities enjoy legal capacity on equal basis with others in all areas of life. The protection of the CRPD extends to older persons with disabilities and those who are perceived to have disabilities. However, older persons with disabilities often fall through the cracks in implementation, and not all older persons do have a disability. Roughly half of all older persons have a disability, and globally older persons comprise 1 in 4 persons living with a moderate or severe disability. On the regional level, there are some very good examples, such as the Inter-American Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, which includes a presumption of legal capacity. However, the fragmentation of approaches has led to serious protection gaps. These shortcomings require urgent attention and action from states together with other key stakeholders. Instead of focusing on decision-making capacity, a presumption of autonomy should be endorsed. This shift needs to be backed by adopting a legal framework on the international, regional, and national level and monitoring implementation. Older persons should be engaged in the development of these policies. The deeply seated notion that aging is linked to decline leads to a presumption of incapacity that must be opposed, and alternatives to institutionalization and guardianship must be installed, so that older persons retain the right to decide for themselves. If placed in an institutional or similar setting, the conditions need to be monitored to prevent exploitation and undue restrictions on their legal capacity. It is also essential to ensure that older persons have access to justice and remedies to challenge restrictions to their autonomy and assert their agency regarding where and with whom they wish to reside. The intersection of age and other types of discrimination, such as sex, gender, ethnicity, or disabilities, remain an aggravating factor to the full enjoyment of legal capacity of older persons, rendering special precaution necessary. Dear Excellencies, colleagues and friends, we must change the paradigm of how society treats older persons and start to recognize them as rights holders. Older persons should be able to participate in autonomous decision-making, ensure their legal capacity, will and preferences are respected and not ignored or overruled by governments, authorities, family members or care professionals under the guise of best interest or other patronizing behaviors. Dear Excellencies, colleagues and friends, during the reporting period I also had the honor to visit the Republic of Moldova from the 7th to the 16th November 2023 and Peru from the 11th to the 22nd March 2024. I want to express my thanks and appreciation to governments of those two countries for their invitation and for the cooperation extended to me before, during and after my visit. I'm looking forward to continuing fruitful and constructive dialogues. I would like to congratulate Peru on their strong legal and institutional framework for protecting older persons. However, I also want to highlight the need for increasing resources, allocation and improved coordination to reduce inequalities, to increase implementation. It is crucial to address the intersecting discrimination faced by older persons, in particular older women and migrants, and older indigenous and LGBTIQ persons. I encourage Peru to continue combating ageist stereotypes, improve care aimed at promoting independent living and addressing poverty through strengthening social protection and labor market inclusion of older persons. Violence and abuse against older persons within families, care homes and prisons must be urgently addressed through systematic studies, prevention and reporting. Once again, I would like to stress the importance of protecting older persons against the impacts of climate change and involving them in disaster preparedness. Furthermore, I urge expediting efforts to ensure accountability for past human rights violations, which continue to affect older persons today, and to refrain from any measures that obstruct justice. Excellencies, colleagues and friends, finally, I would also like to congratulate Peru on their practical support of tailored boat services for people in rural areas, especially in the Amazonas region. This initiative significantly aids older persons in accessing social and health services. Excellencies, colleagues and friends, it had also been an honor to visit the Republic of Moldova last year, engage with a broad range of stakeholders, including government officials, civil society organizations and older persons across various regions. I want to congratulate the country for its recent efforts to improve the situation of older persons, including through its solid national, legal and policy framework. The recent adoption of the program on active and healthy aging, along with the legal framework to ensure social protection in old age, is testament to the government's commitment. Moldova is confronting challenges arising from demographic shifts, with 1/3 of its population expecting to be over 60 by 2040. While inflation rates decrease in 2023, poverty is unfortunately increasing, disproportionately affecting older persons. They remain the most economically disadvantaged group, many of whom rely on inadequate pensions that fail to cover essential needs. This issue is especially severe among marginalized groups, such as older Roma individuals who often lack access to minimum pension due to lifelong inequalities in employment and social contributions. Current non-contributory social assistance schemes reach only 1% of older persons. The gender pension gap exacerbates these challenges as women tend to receive lower pensions. Healthcare access is another concern, particularly in rural areas where resources are scarce. While some community-based care services are available, shortages in personal assistance and regional disparities hinder access for many older persons. In this context, I would like to recall a program that provides up to 1 day of specialized assistance to persons with severe disabilities, including older persons, for a maximum of 30 days per year. This is a commendable practice, allowing caregivers to rest while their loved ones continue to be provided with care and support. Despite the challenges ahead, I would like to thank the government of Moldova and Peru for their continued cooperation in advancing the rights and dignities of older persons, as well as for their support of a globally, legally binding instrument on this issue. I thank you for your attention, and I would now like to conclude my statement with a clear call for a more visibility for the human rights situation of older persons. It is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that the human rights of older persons are visible. It concerns all of us, not only because the young people of today are the older persons of tomorrow. I thank you.